I guess that's kind of just my new intro now. Elden Ring, the masterpiece. Phenomenal game. I love Elden Ring. From its dynamic world design to storytelling collaboration from George R.R. Martin. If you don't know who that is, that's the guy that made Game of Thrones. Pretty popular guy, in my opinion. The game is just outstanding. In my last video, I talked about how the Shadow of the Erd Tree affected Twitch and streaming forever, and how Elden Ring's impact is getting reverberated because of the DLC. But in this video, I wanted to talk more about that impact itself. What is Elden Ring as a whole, and why is it a masterpiece and a perfect game? Let's take a moment to go over just some key pointers, some key details we should not overlook when evaluating the magnitude of Elden Ring. Before we go into some serious glazing territory, I kind of just want to hit the checklist of items that I think are very important to address when it comes to Elden Ring and why it was the perfect game. First things first, the most notable thing is there's no forced questing. Literally, do whatever you want. The closest thing to a questing system in the game is the grace, the light of the lost grace that guides you. The closer you are to a checkpoint or a bonfire, you will be more, the sky will be illuminated greater with the lost grace. And so for me, it's like the Holy Spirit being a guide. And the story, the lost grace protects you, it guides you. It's the only reason why the Tarnished is able to see and know what to do. It is the Holy Spirit guiding them. That's the parable or metaphor I'm going to use because it makes the most sense to me. Second thing, perspective-based storytelling. Every NPC you go to will have a different story of what happened based on who they are in the story. Other games do it, but I think because this game doesn't have a direct, this is what really happened, you have to piece together what really happened in order to get a firm idea of what the story of the game is. And I'm just going to be honest with you. I've watched a lot of videos on the lore of Elden Ring. I still don't got it down all the way. All I know is that it's amazing, complicated, and there's a lot of family feuds going on. Elden Ring, family feud. It's the same thing. Spot the difference. It's the same picture. The thing that made it as interesting as it is to everybody is the Souls-like combat. Now, if you don't know what a Soulsborne or a Souls-like game is, it is essentially a game where the enemies are hard to predict and they do a lot of damage. You also are kind of sluggish in these games for the most part, and dodging and through attacks and, knowing the enemy's patterns are very, very important. Those are what and a stamina system. You can't do activities unlimitedly. There is a finite amount. That is what I would consider a Souls-like game. That being a genre of its own, that is a definitive characteristic that made this game so successful when it came out. Now, I was running the other day in Elden Ring when I was just playing, right? And I heard singing. This is just a story about how wonderful the world design is. I heard singing, and I was like, I don't remember this at all. And still playing through the game, I still find stuff that I never saw the first 2 times I played through. And I don't know if I was just senile or what, but this singing I never heard before. And I see a bat, but really it's a harpy. If you know what a harpy is, it's a mythological creature. If you don't know, Google it, right? I saw a bat harpy creature and it was singing, and I was like, wow, it's beautiful singing. And then it saw me, and then it became hostile and started attacking me, and then it started shrieking. And I think it's really interesting to give these creatures such unique depth and design to them. They're not just beasts in the wild. Well, there is actually just beasts in the wild, but the harpies aren't just monsters. They're their own creatures with their own, society and structure of thought. And I really felt that way when I ran across them in the game. And I was like, wow, this is something I want to note because it's so amazing, giving this creature this much depth. When you're playing through the game, there is this constant looming feeling of dread throughout the whole game, right? As soon as you start playing to the end of the game, there's a constant feeling of dread, and it's very interesting to see and feel, and I think that the sound design is really a big reason for that. Now, I'm not by any means a game director, designer, creator, anything like that. I'm just a game player. I play games, you know what I'm saying? The sound design of the game was most notable. When you first load in the game, what you hear is a boom. The Elden Ring. I don't know if it actually says the Elden Ring, but it is like a boom, like a deep bass sound. And that sets the tone of the whole game. Just that boom. Moving on from there, they get you a little bit of a lore dump, and then you move into the actual game where you're playing, you're seeing the world, you're understanding, okay, this is how you walk, this is how you move, like there's dead bodies everywhere, I have to fight this enemy, I instantly die to it, and now I'm reborn, and I don't understand, and the game slowly starts explaining things to you. And the first character you meet is one of the most interesting characters because they're not as important as you would think they are. Like, usually the first character you meet in the game is like super important to the story, blah blah. That person isn't as important as you would really think until later in the game you discover that. But it's just goes to show you're really just thrown into a world that you're meant to discover. And I think that that's something that's lost in games now. Nowadays, games do one of two things. They make it very linear and very story based, right? For example, Final Fantasy games. Those games typically and generally are very linear with simulated open world aspects. For example, it says if you proceed in the story, you can't go back. Are you sure you want to continue? Why is it an open world then? Why would it be considered an open world? And I think that this is where they draw the line. The line in the sandbox versus the open world games. There's a difference between open world and sandbox, and I would like to think Elden Ring is a sandbox game, but the open world aspect of other games, it just doesn't feel as free. It doesn't feel as liberated. And being liberated from the story is another way to know that it's a free game. You're really allowed to do whatever you want. That's why there's 6 different endings, I believe, to the game. What's interesting is the more that you play the game, the more I have the desire for glory and honor, right? And I think that this is super important with especially the DLC that just came out. People want glory and honor through the combat of the game because that's kind of like the feeling it makes you have. That's why people are doing runs without spells or runs without mimic tears or summons, because they want that glory and the honor. I'm sad to say it, the video game's not going to get you glory or honor. You got to achieve something in your own life to make you feel glorious and honorable. And for me, that is making videos or dancing or talking to my friends and family, whatever. There's all kinds of stuff I do to feel that outside of games. But I will say, beating a hard boss, pursuing through the story, or even just consuming the content of the game makes me feel it strikes an emotional chord with me different than other games, and it's really amazing. The magnitude of Elden Ring is only comparable to that of Skyrim and Diablo 3, and the reason why I say those games is because Skyrim came out well over a decade ago now, and people are still playing it, people are still talking about it. The Elder Scrolls games did a phenomenal job at showing us what medieval RPGs that are open world sandbox games should really feel like, and I think with Elden Ring kind of taking that new precedent, I think it's the best comparison. Now, with that being said, the magnitude of difficulty, obviously much different. The things that you do, obviously much different, right? Like, you can play as like a blacksmith in Skyrim and make 1,000 iron daggers and shoot arrows in the knees and all these things that we know and love, versus this game that is very much so one style of play. Like, there's not thievery the same way. Like, I suppose there is theft in Elden Ring, but not the same type of theft that you can do in Skyrim. But the magnitude of cultural impact that Skyrim made, I think Elden Ring is like the next thing we've seen since then, aside from Diablo 3. Diablo 3 being within its genre, respectively, what Elden Ring is and what Skyrim is for their genres, all being it within like the medieval realm, right? When you think, I want to play a medieval game, those are going to be kind of the 3 games you think of when you want to go into that world of a medieval game. The only other game I could think of would be Dark and Darker, and that game's also pretty bussin'. And I also think that is a game that people need to pay more attention to. Dark and Darker is really fun, especially if you like those kinds of challenging games. One of the reasons why those games are going to be so talked about for so long is because of the shadow that they created from the magnitude of their stature. Having that shadow be where all of the, descendants of the game will live forever in the shadow of the predecessors will be hard to escape. And I really hope one day they will find their escape. And I do feel like games like Baldur's Gate 3 kind of show that they're their own game. You can't really say that that's a Diablo 3 kind of game. You can't say it's a Skyrim kind of game. That is its own story-based, turn-based, storytelling game, right? And I think that that's what makes it outside of those genres. I'm really getting all over the place talking about all kinds of other games, but I think this is just important to understand the type of conversation people have when talking about Elden Ring as a game. When I talk about this, I'm talking to everybody. If you have an opinion on Elden Ring, if you don't have an opinion on Elden Ring, if you have no idea what game I'm talking about, or you've played this game 700 hours, either way, I think it's important that we all share our experiences and perspective on things. I used to say all the time, everybody should write a book, even if it's bad, we should all write a book. And this is kind of what I'm doing about this game, because the other day I was asked, what is my favorite game? And I hesitantly answered and said Terraria. And the reason why I said Terraria was because the initial experience I had first time playing the game, it was so much fun, and the aesthetic and the soundtrack and the idea of the freedom of what I can do in that game, but with the same time the uniqueness of certain items and discoverability. And I was like, man, that's the same experience I had with Elden Ring. And the epiphany that Terraria and Elden Ring are at the same caliber of game blew my mind. Because at the end of the day, you might not have heard of Terraria before. You might have only played Elden Ring. But if you've played Elden Ring and you want to try a game that's just as good, if not better, try Terraria. No, I'm just being serious. I'm serious, though. I think that the first impression of the game is such a big deal. And like I said, when you start that game, Elden Ring, you get that soundtrack, you get the story, you enter into a world that's just open, you see a beautiful landscape, and they let you know from the beginning, this is what the game is about. This is what the game's going to be like. And after I answered and said Terraria was my favorite game, I was told shortly after that my friends was Borderlands 2, and then I had to rethink my decision. Really hard question to answer, really hard to know the truth. Moving deeper into my first impression of Elden Ring, when I got deeper into it, my first play session I played for like 6 hours, and by the end of it, I still hadn't beat the filter boss. I had to come back the next day, but by the time I beat the filter boss, I understood what Elden Ring made me feel and think, which was no matter how challenging, I will prevail. Even if life has many filter bosses in front of you where you think you faced this kind of problem before, or you've seen it similar, or you've never faced this kind of challenge before, once you push past it, everything else you'll be more excited to overcome in the future. That's just my opinion. With that being said, y'all, I hope you enjoyed the video. I kind of wanted just to talk a little bit more about Elden Ring and why I think it is the game that it is today and how long it will be the king of games. I hope everybody can understand my opinions on these and my perspectives, but I would really love to hear yours. You know, what things in Elden Ring did I miss that you think should be more verbalized and appreciated as a game? What's your favorite video game, and how would you compare it to Elden Ring? And do you foresee the future of Elden Ring still being around? Do you think 3 years from now, 4 years from now, a decade from now, we'll still be talking about Elden Rings and its implementations in gaming like we are in Skyrim? Do you think Elden Ring will be that game for that much time? With that being said, if you like the video, leave a like. If you like me, subscribe. But until next time, love you guys. I'm out. Peace. Yep, and just like that, we're in a new room. Yeah, I forgot to tell you that. I forgot to say that. We're in a new room. Very important. You guys know that I moved. I was talking about it in my last video. We're here now. We've actually moved to the new location. I'll be here for a couple months and then into another place in a couple months after that. We're doing stuff. You can't just move easily sometimes. Life's a little hard here in the States, but it is what it is. I also wanted to take a brief moment just to talk to you guys. Thank you for everybody that watches my videos all the way through. I'm always so grateful to see the response and the comments and, people messaging me about the videos and giving me their feedback. Even if it's negative comments, if it's negative feedback, I just appreciate the engagement that you guys have show me the time and effort. It means a lot to me. And I'll probably do these little conversation pieces after my outro from now on in some videos. But yeah, I'm very, very grateful. One thing I will say is I did get a new microphone. So we'll be using this in the next video, I think. I'm very excited to see it. I'm very excited to try it out. It looks pretty portable, so I might be able to take it with me and record other places on my laptop. Thank you for the 150 subscribers. We're moving through there. We're moving through there. I think we'll get to a good place here soon to have 1,000 subscribers. Hopefully start making some money. That'll make it a lot easier to hire editors and things like that when I start getting a little bit of cheddar cheese. You know what I'm saying? So send it to your mom, send it to your friend, send it to your boyfriend, send it to your girlfriend, send it to whoever. Send this video to somebody. Thank you guys.